Welcome to another episode of Unbox Your Curiosity. I'm your host, Christiane Zhao. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to give you a bit of context for this special episode. Recently, I was invited to give a keynote speech at an international school. The audience was a mix of students, parents, and educators, all navigating that big, messy question of how to prepare for the future in a fast-changing world. That talk sparked some great conversations, so I've adapted it here for this podcast episode. This isn't just for students. It's for anyone standing at a crossroads. Whether you're a teenager figuring out your next steps, a young professional rethinking your direction, or a parent wondering how to support your child with more clarity and less pressure. We'll explore how to make smart, human-centered decisions about education. We'll talk about planning a career without panic, and we'll look at what it really takes to build a sense of belonging, especially when you're growing up across cultures. To guide us through, I'm joined by Melisa, my AI co-host for this episode. She'll help move the conversation forward with questions and prompts. And as we go, I'll draw from real experiences, my own path through New Zealand, China, the US, and now Germany, to give you insights that are not only practical, but honest. Because the goal here isn't to give you a perfect map. It's to help you see the landscape more clearly and find a way forward that feels like yours. All right, let's get started, Melisa.
Illuminating the landscape, not just handing out a map. I like that. Because that landscape, it feels, well, increasingly uncertain, doesn't it? Competitive, complex, with all the tech shifts, global changes. It really makes you ask, how do we even define success anymore? What does it actually look like now?
That's such a fundamental question because you know what we used to think of as success? It's really shifted. When I was younger, it was all about the traditional stuff. Yeah. Top grades, getting into that prestigious school, having a very, very rigid plan mapped out. But what we've learned, and what I've certainly seen, is that those things, they don't guarantee fulfillment anymore. I wasn't necessarily a grade A student at all time, and different systems have different definitions on success. Same for people. My own thinking has changed a lot today. I genuinely believe true success is more about fit and growth. You know, finding the environment that actually helps you grow, not just perform based on some external benchmark. It's about understanding who you are and building from there. And to explore this, we're going to look at 3 key pillars for long-term success.
3 pillars. Okay, that sounds like a helpful way to break it down. What are they?
So first is education fit, really consciously choosing the right learning environment for you. Second, early career exploration. This is about planning for a career, but without all that intense pressure. Seeing it more as a journey, you know? Yeah. Discovery, not a fixed destination. And the third one is emotional and cultural integration. This is about navigating your identity, your sense of belonging, which is especially relevant now with everything being so interconnected and diverse.
Okay, so the big message here seems to be, success isn't this static thing you just arrive at. It's more of an ongoing process, finding the right place to really, truly grow and explore.
Precisely, it's dynamic. And let's dive into that first pillar then, education fit. My own path moving through such different systems, New Zealand, China, the US, Germany, it really threw into sharp relief just how varied the approaches can be. Each has its own strengths and frankly trade-offs.
Can you give us some examples? Because for families trying to make these big decisions, it can feel overwhelming, like navigating a maze.
Oh, absolutely. Let's take Germany.
Yeah.
It's typically highly structured, strict curriculums, required courses. Now that can be fantastic for students who thrive on predictability, who like knowing exactly what's expected. Then you look at the US system. Often it offers way more flexibility, more room for exploration. A great example is Northeastern University's co-op program.
Co-op? How does that work?
Well, essentially, your final year, or even parts of earlier years, can involve rotating through actual companies doing real work. And it's not just like a side internship. This experience often paid, directly counts towards your degree credits. It really blends the academic with the practical.
Wow, that's quite different.
Very different. And then you have, say, New Zealand, where I grew up, generally more relaxed, more student-led initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And China, known for being extremely rigorous, very exam-focused. Each system fosters different skills and suits different personalities. Of course, I studied at an international school with IB and MYP, so it might be slightly a different case for me.
That contrast is really useful. So moving beyond the broad system type, what specific things should families be looking at when choosing a specific school or path for their child?
Great question because, again, it's not about finding the best school on some list. It's about the best match for that individual child. Yeah. So first I'd say personality fit, right? Does your child really buckle down and thrive with clear rules and structure? Or do they light up when things are more open-ended, more exploratory? Are they drawn to imaginative, artistic things or more towards logic, statistics, math? That's fundamental. Second, you can't ignore cost and value. Tuition fees are all over the place. The US can be incredibly expensive. Germany, on the other hand, public universities often have very low fees. Sometimes none for undergrads have to weigh that. Third, think about the pathway to career. Does that specific institution emphasize practical skills, maybe internships or co-ops like Northeastern, or is the focus almost purely academic? What fits the goal? And finally, language and cultural ease. Is the child prepared or even excited to learn in a different language? For example, I am not so good at learning new language, but, well, I ended up in Germany now. Adapt to a new culture? It is really a complicated topic that goes beyond just learning the new language. But after all, I would say, life is so much more amazing after we are exposing ourselves to so many different cultures. It's been a real challenge, and that impacts everything. Your studies, your social life, your well-being, and in the best case, if the parents and the children can support each other to walk through this process.
So it really goes way beyond just the school's ranking or reputation.
Absolutely. I've seen brilliant students struggle in top-tier places because the fit was wrong.
Mhm.
And others just blossomed in schools, maybe less famous, but where they felt truly supported and engaged.
So what practical steps can families take?
Talk to alumni. Yeah, that's huge. Get their real experiences. Visit campuses if you possibly can. Feel the atmosphere. Maybe even try a summer school program there. The goal isn't the highest rank, it's a best match. Honestly, fit beats prestige almost every time in the long run.
What about the roles, parents versus students?
Parents need to see the bigger picture. I think focus on long-term support. See life after graduation as a marathon, not just this sprint to get into the university. For students, the work is discovering the why. Why this path and being really honest about your fears, your needs, what do you actually want? Oh, and something practical. Some international baccalaureate programs, the IB can sometimes give you credit for university courses. That can be a real advantage, saving time and money if planned well.
That focus on fit is so important, and it leads nicely into our second pillar, planning for a career. You frame this as planting seeds, not pouring cement, focusing on exploration over locking things in too early. How does someone even start that exploration, especially if they feel a bit lost?
Feeling lost is okay. Honestly, it's off of the starting point. My own story is pretty simple. Here, in high school, I was interested in publishing, so I started a magazine club.
A magazine club?
Yeah, nothing fancy, but doing that, I learned how to, build a small team, manage a little project, and I discovered I was actually interested in media, in leadership, even marketing a bit. Now, did I end up wanting to be a magazine editor? No, but that early experience, it definitely planted seeds. Years later, I did end up writing and publishing a book. So those small, early tastes of things, they can guide you in unexpected ways, even if the end goal changes completely.
That's a great example of how small beginnings can lead somewhere significant. It really shows that discovery isn't always this big planned event. So beyond just grades or padding a resume, what skills should students really focus on building today?
Self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Honestly, that can often count for more than your grades down the line. How do you build those through diverse experiences? Try center in shifts, volunteer. I did stints as a public nutritionist, helped out as a research assistant, even just shadowing someone in a field you're curious about. These things teach you what you like, what drains you, what you're good at. And university. It's probably the best playground for exploration. So much freedom, lower stakes than later in life. Beyond the GPA focus on skills like communication, being able to articulate your ideas, public speaking, leadership, and teamwork are vital and something I've seen is incredibly important in corporate life.
And for parents watching their kids go through this, how can they support exploration without adding pressure? You mentioned planning with them, not for them.
Yes, that with not for is key. Parents should act more like coaches or sounding boards. Ask open-ended questions. What really excites you these days? What kind of problems do you find interesting? What activities make you lose track of time? What totally drains your energy? Then help them explore those sparks. Maybe it's finding an online course, connecting them with someone in that field, or even just volunteering somewhere related, like interacting with pets at an NGO if they love animals. Encourage that first small step. The crucial thing is not to overplan their whole life. The world changes too fast for that. Encourage exploration. Let them try things. Let them adjust their goals. It's about planting those seeds, like we said, and giving them space and support to grow whichever way they lean.
That idea of space and support transitions us perfectly to the third pillar, cultural integration and identity. Now, given your own background, Chinese heritage, born and raised in New Zealand, studied in China and the US, now living in Germany, this must resonate very personally.
Oh, deeply, yes. I've spent a lot of time wrestling with that question, where do I belong? Feeling like an insider and an outsider at the same time. Navigating language barriers, dealing with stereotypes, it's complex. My journey involved, really believing in that global citizen idea for a long time, then kind of hitting the reality of cultural differences, and eventually finding my way back to a more nuanced version of it. Finding yourself in that mix. It takes time, and it's not just a question for the kids, it's for parents too. Who am I? Who do I want to be often? Children absorb and reflect their parents' own anxieties or limitations around identity and belonging.
That's a really important point. So what practical things can parents and educators do to help children navigate these tricky waters of identity?
I think the absolute first step is creating emotional safety, making space for conversations about culture, about stereotypes, about feeling different, about language struggles, not necessarily to provide all the answers or fix anything, but just to normalize it, to show that discomfort and confusion are okay. They're part of growth.
So talking about it openly.
Yes, encourage talking about identity at home, maybe around the dinner table, make it normal and relate to that. Build their confidence. Talk openly about challenges too, like maybe experiences with bullying or feeling excluded. Kids need to feel safe enough to bring these things up, knowing they'll be supported, not judged. They need to feel they can show up fully as themselves.
You shared a quote about this that really stuck with me. You don't have to break every stereotype, but don't let it box you in. Could you unpack that a little?
Yeah, that comes from lived experience. People would say to me, "Oh, you're Chinese. You must be amazing at math." And look, I actually do enjoy math and I work hard at it, but my ability comes from effort and curiosity, not my ethnicity. So the point is, kids will encounter stereotypes. You can't shield them completely, but you can help them see the stereotype for what it is. A generalization, often inaccurate, and empower them to define themselves based on their own interest, efforts, and choices. Don't let those external labels become internal boxes. Acknowledge the stereotype. Maybe even challenge it sometimes, but don't let it limit who they believe they can be.
That's powerful. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to address, the elephant in the room for students today, AI. Things like ChatGPT, Grammarly, Notion AI. They're everywhere. How should we be thinking about these tools in education?
It really is the elephant, isn't it? Because students are already using these tools every day, often very quietly, just integrated into how they study and work. So the first thing is acknowledging that then we absolutely have to draw a clear ethical line using AI to say, write an entire essay and submit it as your own work. That's completely not allowed. That's cheating, plain and simple. We need to be unambiguous about that.
So that's the misuse. But where's the line for productive ethical use? How can AI be helpful for learning?
Oh, it can be incredibly helpful when used correctly. Think of it as a smart assistant or a tutor. It's great for brainstorming ideas for a project, generating an outline to get you started on an essay, creating mind maps to organize thoughts. I've personally used AI tools to help me learn German vocabulary and practice grammar. And for explaining complex math concepts, it can really accelerate learning by providing personalized support and structure, letting you learn at your own pace.
So it's a tool to enhance learning, not replace the effort.
Exactly. And this is a crucial, but we have to be really clear about what AI cannot replace.
What are those irreplaceable things?
Well, AI can't replace genuine curiosity. It doesn't have empathy. It lacks judgment, that human ability to weigh nuances and make considered decisions. It cannot teach you how to sit with a difficult question, to really wrestle with it yourself and come up with an original insight. And maybe most importantly, AI cannot build character. It can't replicate those essential human moments of struggling with something hard, maybe failing, picking yourself up, trying again, and growing through that process. That struggle is where resilience and deeper understanding are forged.
So the learning process itself, the effort, is valuable.
Immensely valuable. So the key message here has to be AI is a powerful tool. Yes, it's not a teacher in the human sense, and it's definitely not a shortcut to real understanding or skill. It should amplify our thinking, help us organize and explore, but never replace the core human work of learning. And honestly, in an age where AI can generate text or code so easily, those uniquely human qualities, critical thinking, creativity, empathy, ethical judgment, they actually become even more important.
That's a really critical perspective for navigating the future. As we start to wrap up this deep dive, if you could leave our listeners, the parents, the students, with one final overarching piece of advice, what would that be?
I think if I had to boil it all down, it would be this focus on who you're becoming, not just what you're achieving. The right school, the perfect grade, the impressive first job title, those things are often temporary markers. What really endures, what forms the foundation of a fulfilling life, is the kind of person you cultivate yourself to be. The skills, the character, the self-awareness.
And drawing on everything we've discussed today, what does that well-rounded person look like in practice?
It really brings us back to those 3 pillars we talked about. It means finding that educational environment where you genuinely fit, where your unique way of learning and being is nurtured. That's the education fit. It means embracing early career exploration, giving yourself permission to try different things, to discover what truly energizes you without feeling you need the perfect plan from day one. The exploration piece, and it means consciously working on cultural integration and identity, understanding yourself, navigating diversity with empathy, and defining who you are beyond any labels or stereotypes. That's the integration pillar. Ultimately, skills like emotional intelligence, resilience, adaptability, these often end up mattering far more in the long run than a specific GPA or university name. I'll have to use a metaphor of a marathon, life after school, your career, your personal growth. It's a long marathon, not a sprint. So the goal, whether for yourself or for your child, should be to train for that marathon, build confidence, step by step, develop resilience by overcoming challenges, gain clarity about your values and what truly matters to you. Those are the assets that will serve you for a lifetime.
That's a wonderful way to frame it. Building the person, training for the marathon. So for you, our listener, as we close, perhaps a final thought to carry with you. How can you apply these ideas of fit and exploration to your own life journey, or maybe support someone you care about in theirs? How can you keep fostering that self-discovery and adaptability in our always changing world? Keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
And that's a wrap on today's deep dive. If there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this. The path forward doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. Whether you're choosing a school, exploring a career, or figuring out where you truly belong, it's okay to ask questions, to pivot, and to take your time. Support doesn't always come from having the answers. It comes from creating the space to grow, to listen, and to be honest, especially with ourselves. If today's episode sparked a thought or a conversation, I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or explore more episodes of Unbox Your Curiosity on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify. Until next time, keep asking better questions, stay curious, and trust your process.